whatever time it is in your time zone, wherever you are right now. I have a very, very special friend, to guess, Curtis. And Curtis and I, we met just, I think, 2 weeks ago or a week ago
Yeah.
through a mutual friend. And I had the pleasure to visit his studio in Melbourne that he will talk a little bit more about. And we just have just a really good conversation because he is just an amazing guy. He's not just a really amazing mixing engineer, but I saw him in this session, in the recording session, and Curtis has this amazing ability to really bring out the best in people by absolutely encouraging them and never say a bad word, but really challenging. I remember, Curtis, you said something like, "This was a really good take, but I see some magic coming on," something along those lines. And I really
Yeah.
like that. Can you tell us a little bit about your workflow? How do you work with clients, and do you have a philosophy behind that? How you work with clients? What's your approach there?
Yeah, sure. So it depends on the job because a lot of what I do is just mixing, but then some of what I do is the recording and the producing side as well. If it's from the producing side, and when you're actually in the room with the client, my philosophy is always keep positivity up. Make sure they're always smiling, having a great time, and make sure they're comfortable. Right? If
Mm-hmm.
they're comfortable, I find that's when they perform best.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like we all know, best performance equals best product, regardless of if it's recorded on a potato, but the performance is great. I'll take it.
Fun. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I really enjoyed seeing that. Curtis, what would you call yourself if someone asks you, "Hey, Curtis, what do you do?" What would you
Sure.
say?
I would say mix engineer first and foremost. That's definitely where my passions and talents lie mostly.
Mm-hmm.
But we all do it all these days, don't we? Recording, producing, mastering, um, whatever is needed on the project. But definitely skewed to majority of mix work for pop in particular and things like that.
Yeah. What is one? Is there one project that you've done in your career that was really outstanding? And if so, why? Why do you think it was so?
Um, I don't know. I have this like goldfish brain memory when it comes to projects. So
Maybe a
like,
good thing.
yeah. Like a project will come through and I'll be really, really excited about it, and I'll just like obsess over it for however long I work on it. And then the next one starts and I almost forget and then just move on and I'm in love with the next one. Um, but oh man, what are some special ones? I mean, I just finished this a new EP for The Gaze. Gaze is the artist, and it's really cool, really interesting, fun pop. The beats were all made by different producers,
Okay.
so one of them's got like an 8-bit sort of feel,
Okay.
and one of them's more like I guess Kate sort of almost Craig David-y.
Ah,
Yeah,
nice.
so that's been a really fun project.
Yeah.
Um, but it's hard to think of one.
Well, maybe that's your strengths, that you always the project that you work on is just the most important, and that's where you really focus all your energy instead of thinking, oh, that project was way better or something like that. Maybe that's an advantage.
Yeah,
Not sure.
maybe.
Not sure.
Um, yeah, I hadn't even thought about it that way. I guess this is great already.
I
Insight.
just I just love psychology. I love how people work. I'm doing this counseling degree at the moment to really dive more into how people work, because I really think as a creative in the music industry, or as a service provider, probably more what I would call us.
Mm.
Um, I think being able to read people and understand people and make people feel comfortable with what you said, I think is absolutely essential, right?
Oh, absolutely essential. And so a brief thing, we've got another studio truth in Brisbane. That's the
Hmm.
original one. And the owner there and the starter, the first guy to do Studio Truth, his name's Tyson Ruth, great dude. Me and him have these conversations all the time
Hmm.
about breaking down psychology and music and our field. And the recent one that we talked about, which I'm sure you'll love this, is the challenges that you face, especially being a producer or someone that's leading a musical project, when you are do you know much about the Myers-Briggs stuff?
Yeah, sure.
That? Right. So usually we're kind of like the TJs, we're like the structured, logical, okay, how are we going to best use our time? And then artists are all like the FPs that are like super, they're making decisions based on the way that they feel, which is essential when it comes to improvisation and stuff like that. But these juxtapositions don't always, the communication can be a bit hard sometimes.
Yes.
I'm sure you can relate to that.
Absolutely. I mean, how did you grow up musically? Did you start with playing an instrument, or how did you get into that field? Because for me, it's quite easy to relate to the creative side, because I've studied classic guitar. I've played a lot of gigs, so I can understand. I can relate to that. But I think the more I grow into this producer part over the last 8-10 years, the more I can also see the other side. So I can still relate. But how was it for you? Like, how did you grow up musically that made you decide to go in the mixing direction?
Oh, I was all music.
Yeah.
I didn't even think this is where I wanted to go. I grew up in a musical family, very fortunate with that. So I had music around all the time and picked up every instrument I could. Not that I got very good at any of them, but I tried at least.
And enough to impress someone.
Maybe.
Parties.
Maybe.
Okay. So your parents played instruments? So
yeah. So my mother's side, she's a vocalist. They're all pretty much singers. My uncle's a guitarist. A lot of pianists in the family. Unfortunately, that's one thing I never got from the bloodline is the piano.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of that. And then on my biological father's side, turns out, is the percussion. My grandfather, it's a long story, but essentially I connected with that family when I was 16, and I'd already been playing drums and I never really met them. And when I met them, they were astonished that I was playing drums, because everyone plays drums. My uncle is a professional session player, it turns out. My grandfather was a professional drummer as well. So very fortunate. I think I got like the melodicy and the rhythm kind of, yeah, hopefully.
Nice. Maybe there's a drummer gene. Maybe you got the drummer gene.
I think there might be. I don't know, like, rhythm is so everything to me. I love rhythm. Kick and snare. It's all I need in a track. Kick, snare, vocals. That's all I want.
So whenever we listen to your music mixed, if we just hear the kick, the snare, and the vocals, we know it's your mix.
It's a good chance that that'll be louder than everything else by a long point. Yeah.
So you grew up with music, playing drums and all instruments. And how did you? Was there like a pivotal point where you decided, you know what, I think I can make my living out of that? Or how did you said you were sliding into it a little bit? What was the journey?
Yeah, there was definitely a point. I would have been probably around 16 actually. And it kind of like, as you grow up and you start to have bigger thoughts, like, oh, the future.
This weird thing, the future. Yeah.
And I was like, I guess it kind of dawned on me that it might be more difficult to be a professional musician than I would have expected. I can't just play to auditoriums for, by chance.
Yeah.
But I knew that like music had been my everything and always had been my everything, and I needed to do that. So my mum actually was like, have you thought about audio engineering? And I was like, what's that?
Yeah.
And went to an open day, and it's quite a magical story, but went into the open day, got talking to somebody by total chance. I think we were obsessing over a Pink Floyd poster or Hendrix or something. Yeah, it's always that way. And the guy turned out to be the person that ran that campus.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can see you're driven and interested. Do you want to start on Monday? And I was like, look, like, I know the rules, whatever. And he's like, but I can tell that you will actually do this. Like, if you want, I can have you in on Monday. And so after begging and pleading with the parents, mum was cool. Dad, he's cool about it now.
What did he wanted you to do?
I think he wanted me to stay in school,
Mm-hmm.
finish school before going into uni,
Yeah, yeah, gotcha.
which is completely understandable. But fortunately, I think Mum won that argument,
Nice.
and I started at 16. So very
Wow.
fortunate, get an early start.
So you stopped school for going to audio engineering school, and that
Yes.
was that SAE at that point?
It was
Yeah.
SAE. At that point, it was in Milton, which no longer exists. It's now in a
Mhm.
different suburb, but the Brisbane one.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. How were you the youngest?
I think so. Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
was either the or the second youngest to graduate.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was wild. And it had its own set of challenges. Like, I think if I had gone a bit later, I probably would have learnt a bit better. Or
Why?
taken
What stopped you from learning?
immaturity. I didn't apply myself as much as I probably should have. And ironically then had to relearn that stuff later.
What,
But
you didn't have that maturity with 16? To stick to a curriculum and just do as you're told? That's weird.
yeah. Well, on the positive side, like when we finished class, everyone would go to the bar, and obviously I couldn't go to the bar, so I'd stay at the uni and I would like get to play on all of the toys and learn more, right? So I guess it was a double-edged sword.
So would you say the reason for your today's success is because you were too young to drink?
Maybe.
Maybe. Nice. Okay, so and then so you were this kind of shining star. You were, how old were you when you finished? Like 19, 18, 19, something?
I was about 18 because I know that all my friends were finishing school at the same time. Yeah, about 18, I reckon.
Interesting. And then, of course, it happens what has to happen. You get your degree, and then people knock at your door and saying like, "Hey, I heard you got this degree. Do you want to work with me for this this major label project for 200 grand?" And it was just from there.
That's exactly how it happened.
To everyone, right?
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Oh man. Oh no, not at all. I worked at 2 jobs. I got a job at a cafe, and I got a job at like JB Hi-Fi, I think it was. And I just worked as much as I could, and saved as much money as I could to try and build a studio. That was the next like 2 years after uni.
Wow. So you, at that point, you had that kind of declaration to yourself. You had that idea. Okay, well, this is definitely what I want to do after those 2 years. Yeah,
I don't know if it was so much foresight that maybe. I think another part was that I was just really obsessed with it. I started doing it because I wanted to work with music as a career, but then through uni, I fell in love with audio engineering. And so I was just such a nerd for it. I just lived and breathed it every day, and I obsessed over what gear to get next. And I don't think I was even making money. I think I was just doing records for like a 6-pack or something. Just to get the portfolio together. You know how it goes.
Well, now that you could drink, right?
Oh, yes. At that point, I could.
There you go. All right. So you slowly started making music. You got a couple of side jobs. You saved some money. You probably were still living at your parents', so expenses were low.
I was living in the worst, like, a bunch of 18-year-olds.
Together, in a shared house or something.
Yeah, it looked and smelled what you think.
Oh, nice. Do you know, like in London, where the house prices are just through the roof, and also New York, I heard that, and I think they're starting in Berlin as well, where I come from. You can actually rent now closets to live in.
What?
Yeah, like you can. For the people who work 16 hours a day, they literally they have the closet and that's what they're having. So they have the mattress basically on the floor, and then they have the stuff on top of that, and the rest of the room belongs to someone else, and it's still like astronomical. Like, look it up. It's crazy.
Man.
Yeah.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, but I don't know. Looking back, like if I was 18 and I wanted to save the maximum amount of money, and I'm just out anyway, why not sleep in a closet for a couple of years? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, how acoustic is the is the closet?
Yeah, true, true. I
Can
mean,
I ask
because
you a question?
yeah,
Like, every time you've ever moved in your whole life,
yeah.
do you like walk into the room and go like,
Of course,
yeah,
of course. And then you start drumming on different things in the room, on the heater, on the doors, on yeah. I mean,
Uh,
how else would you pick your next house? You know, is
yeah,
there something else you should consider? I mean, water is not that important. You know, you can always get it. Yeah, yeah, but definitely all the time, and it drives people mad.
yeah.
Why do you do that? Well, because it's actually really interesting. You know, your clapping has like a broad frequency, and you can actually see like, you know, what
How else am I going to hear those flutter? Like, you know, the standing waves.
you
Are
don't
these walls
understand.
perfectly adjacent? I can't see. I don't know.
Totally, totally. And I don't think we're alone in that. I don't think we're
No,
alone in that.
no.
Especially for percussive people, I think it's really important how a room sounds because you have
Oh,
those
yeah.
impulses a lot. So yeah, totally on your side. So so you were in the smelly 18. You were
Oh,
smelly. You were 18. You had a
yeah.
couple of jobs. When did you start actually making money that you would say like, you know what, this is actually my only job I'm doing? When was it?
Well, that didn't actually happen that way.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
What actually happened was, so a long time basically. What happened was, after doing that for a while, the owner of the Studio Truth in Brisbane, Tyson Ruth, he was mastering a project that I had mixed and produced an album, and he heard it, and he had me come through to provide some stems with him.
Yeah.
And we got along really well. And you know, the funny thing, in my not arrogance, naivety, my youth, stupid youth, going to this guy's place, I was like, oh, this guy's trying to hustle my clients away. Like, I don't know, it's like bad attitude.
Yeah.
Nicest guy ever. We get along, and he's like, oh, you did this? How old are you? Do you want to work with me?
Nice.
Which was amazing. And so he kind of took me as a kind of a protege and taught me a lot of things. But
Mhm.
I did that for years and was too scared to make the leap into full-time audio. I was too scared to try.
Mm.
And so what ended up happening was I ended up getting fired from a job. And at that point, everyone around me was like, why don't you just do the full-time thing? Like, this is, you know, the perfect kick up the ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was, and it was the best decision I ever made. And I was absolutely terrified, but it worked out. And that would have been probably only 5 years ago now. And so I would have been doing this for 5 years before that, or maybe
Wow.
6.
Mm-hmm. So, and so when you got fired and you decided, okay, this is freaking scary, but I'll do this. What happened then? Did you have money saved? Did you lend
No.
some money, or what happened then? Like, how did you actually start becoming an entrepreneur or your own studio owner? What was the way to that?
It was like the scariest time of my life. I'd already had a lot of work going on, and that was actually causing issues with my at the time it was a hospitality job,
Yeah.
because I would only work 2 days a week, and I would turn down shifts because I needed to work at the studio. And yeah, so I knew I had some projects that would keep me going. Whether that would be enough to pay rent the next month, I didn't know, and I did not have savings
Wow.
at all. So I just went hard. I just like called up every past client. I did the hustle. I went out as much as I could, and kind of hoped for the best. And fortunately, it turned out all
Yeah.
right.
So you kind of transitioned from a couple of side shop and mixing, recording And then it kind of like got more and more mixing, recording, producing, and less side jobs. So was it this fluent
Yeah.
transition?
Sorry?
Was it a fluent transition from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, although I definitely did feel um when the regular job stopped and it just started audio, I definitely felt it in the wallet. That's for sure. At
Yeah.
first.
There was definitely a drop, right? It wasn't
Oh
kind of
yeah.
like, yeah.
The comfortability factor had gone. I could no longer rely on regular income. Now it was sporadic and
Hmm.
all over the place.
But what made you decide, like, what was the inherent factor for you to say, like, you know what, I want to do that full time? Why wasn't it like, okay, you know what, I have the comfort of having my side jobs and I make my money and that is just something that I love doing. What, why was it a necessity for you to go pro?
That's a really good question. I'd always dreamed about it. I'd always wanted to. And that drive, that hunger, I'd always not wanted to be a full-time audio guy. I'd always wanted to be the best. Initially, it was the best like rock guy, which that dream didn't last very long. Then
Rock
it
guy,
became
rock mixing or
no
playing,
producing.
producing? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then it became I want to be like the pop producing guy. That's what I want to do. Um, and then of course now it's settled into I just want to be the pop mixing guy. But whatever the dream was at the time, it wasn't going to be I just want to be good. It was I want to be the best at that.
Mm,
Um, and so I felt really silly to have not gone full time for years.
yeah,
But this was the kick I guess I needed.
yeah. Wow. Okay, so when you then went full time, you had a little bit of less money. Did it ever stabilize from then on, or is your job usually something that fluctuates, or do you have like a stable client base enough that you know, okay, well, for the next years, I'm okay? Or how does it work financially? How's the financial pressure as a professional mixing engineer?
It's now it's fine, but it was a long time where there was the question was always there: Are we going to be all right next month? Um, and you know, if a big job came through, you would stash and save, stash it under the mattress, and like pray to God or whatever deity, you know, that that's going to be okay.
Mhm.
And then in hindsight, I would do things slightly differently. I'd always had a thing against credit cards, but in hindsight, I definitely would have got one just to assist with cash flow while getting more established.
Yeah,
Would have taken a lot of pressure off mentally.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Uh, yeah, credit card are the double-edged sword, right? I mean, you can use them if you know what you're doing. I think it's okay, but I mean, and for me, it's really difficult because I don't know any country in the world that actually teaches like financial literacy in school
yeah, why
or
is that?
anything. Well, my theory is because, see, if you teach someone in school to be independent and to go what they want to go for, it's hard to control the outcome of that, right? Because
Yeah,
we can't all be creatives, you know. We
yeah.
also need people to say like, you know what, my job is good enough and it compensates for having a regular income, you know.
Without that, the economy stops, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, when I finished school when I was 18, I think I got my first. I signed my first record contract when I was 17 with the band that I was playing in at the time, and so kind of for me going pro was pretty much always what I wanted to do from that point on, and but I really wanted to be sure before I dedicate. You know what you think? You know, when you're 16, 17, you think like, well, decision that I make now is there for the rest of my life. It's irreversible,
Yeah,
right? You
yeah,
will work for it for the next 80 years. So I wanted to be just like 100% sure. Okay, well, music is definitely what I wanted to do. So what I thought in my logic, but before I decide that, I want to work 3 months in something that I would say that I absolutely hate, right? So I got a job into a manufacturing the facility, and they were manufacturing a heating system for cars, like literally
wow.
the most adverse job that you can think of as a creative, because you literally go in, you put your brain in a box, right? Then you go on a machine, and still, Curtis, like after all of those years, and I was 17, 18 at that time, so almost 20 years ago, I still remember the moves, and I still remember the songs from the radio, because there was one radio station, and mainstream radio, they literally just play 5 songs.
Wow.
And there was Britney Spears' "Oops, I Did It Again."
Great song.
Yeah, it's a great song, but if you hear it like every day, like 15 times for 3 months, it does something, just like very, very damaging to your brain.
Yeah.
But the cool thing, when you talk to the people who are working there, and some of them, they were working there for 29 years. There was one guy who was working on the assembly line for 29 years. And I mean, assembly line means you have to call someone to replace you if you want to go to the toilet assembly line, right?
Right.
So for 29 years, and there was this corner where everyone was smoking. I wasn't smoking, but that's the only thing that you do. You just stand around. And I was just talking to them and saying like, well, are you happy here? Why do you do this job? Why not a different job, and so on? And this guy who worked there for 20 years said like, I am the happiest man in life. And I said, why? Well, I have a great family. I work under a roof. I get paid every month the same. I get a raise every 5 years or 3 years or whatever. If I'm sick, it's okay. I can go on holidays. I can plan. I have my house. I am the happiest fucker in life, right? And I was like, that was the first time in my life that I considered, yeah, okay, I get it. I don't have to be creative, and not everyone has to be creative in life, right? We're not here necessarily in life to do all the same thing. And he was just really happy with what he was doing. Like a bad word that they used was actor. Like if someone was a little bit fancy or was dreaming too much, they called them, oh, he's such an actor, right? So that was their way of saying, distinguishing themselves from someone who's kind of flaky. I never told them I want to be a musician.
Yeah.
I never told them why I was there, And it was funny because in the 3 months, Curtis, I made more money than in the next 10 years after.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely.
It really fucked with my brain, right? But
have there been times through your career where you've thought very seriously about stepping it back and getting a normal job again, even just part-time?
To be honest, no. I wish I would say yes, but I think that was really my identity. I think for the last 15 years, there was no alternative. There was no, I liked other things, but I could never see myself doing anything else. And I think because I'm not very particular in what I'm exactly doing. Let's say like this, I don't need to do just this one thing or nothing. I was always very flexible. I was working for the state, designing like music programs for children's education centers. Then I was working as a manager for a music school. Then I was founding, a music school myself. I was doing productions. I was doing mixing, going on tour. I was a touring musician a lot. I worked for as a singer-songwriter professionally. So there were always a lot of
all the music jobs there are.
All music jobs, yeah. But I never thought about quitting any of those because probably I always had a diversity of different fields that kind of kept me afloat. And I didn't never really need much, to be honest. I wasn't like, my epiphany of success was not owning a car. I didn't even have a license before I came.
That's good, because this industry it's not great for that.
I mean, for the viewers of you, the speakers that you see there behind Curtis, you can buy comfortably a very good used car for that, right? That's right.
But why would you have a car?
Exactly. but right. I mean, that's just priorities, and it's just different levels of the definition of what success is, right? Success for us is having good gear that makes us happy, and we have clients, and
it's so true,
right? For the majority of people, Curtis, that will be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Right, and that's okay too. And I think that diversity, that everyone needs different things, is I think really, really good. But it really bugs me that we coming back to this financial literature, right, where my monologue started here. I think it's really a shame that people don't given this opportunity to kind of say like, hey, you don't need to end up in a conveying belt or in a 9 to 5 if that's not what you want to do.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
But I think most creative people, they kind of stumble through that, right? They stumble. Oh, wait a minute. There's a hidden door. Wait, there's
Yeah,
another world than other than 9 to 5.
I think so too. And also, not so much from my experience, but a lot of my friends have had a lot of generational pressure
Mhm.
from, some of the older generations that never had the luxury, quote unquote. I guess for them, it was seen as a luxury to work in something that wasn't a 9 to 5.
Mhm. Mhm.
So again, I feel very privileged to have not been brought up that way, but so many of my creative friends struggle with that with their parents. And even a couple of years ago, my mum, who's been incredibly supportive, said something about, have you considered looking into this, kind of a backup plan, I guess. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Why? Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? No,
Mhm.
definitely not.
Yeah.
No,
No,
I don't
I
know.
understand that. Have you ever read the book The Fifth Agreement from Don Miguel Ruiz?
No, no.
So it's the ideas about how do you live a fulfilled life, right? And he basically says, look, there are 5 basic agreements you can make with yourself in order to have a beautiful life, right? And one of this agreement is don't take anything personally, right? Because the way that people act to you, what they say to you, how they think, how they move, what decisions they make, we tend to take that as a reflection of our reality, right? Or I wouldn't do that.
Mm.
Or how can say someone something to me like that, How can, but if you, and he has in that book, he has this metaphor of that we're all living in our own cinema and we're all watching our own movie. But
I
since
like that. I love
but,
that analogy.
and I think that's you do that automatically, and I can see you doing that, Curtis. You as a producer and as a creative working with other people and for other people, we need to go out of our cinema, acknowledge that it's just our movie, and now we need to go into other people's cinema and sit behind the first row where the person sits watching their movie and see, like, how do they see life?
Yeah.
What distortions do they have? And I think your mom is just coming from the perspective, hey, she just wants you to be safe, and
Oh,
that's
of course.
right.
Of course.
And it's really interesting. How past generations, what that, psychological safety is super important, and even
Oh, yeah.
physical safety, right? Having a roof over the house is just, that's
Yeah.
happiness, right?
I mean, it's Maslow's, right? The hierarchy of needs.
Yeah,
What is
exactly.
it? Shelter and food and is it security?
Yeah. When you physical safety, right? Shelter, food, security, physical security, and so on. And then you have your psychological primary needs and so on.
Mm.
And the highest one then is self-actualization.
That's right. Self-actualization.
Yeah. It's interesting. Actually, we can go into that. We could go into that super deep because there's actually, Maslow said, there's actually other levels above that. And
Ah, yeah.
And I think that's what we do automatically, Curtis, because after self-actualization is actually the appliance of that, and then it's building communities. Because if you
Ah,
self-actualize, it's good because you know yourself now, but now it's about applying that self to the bigger picture, and that is the world, right? The community, other
oh
people, and so on.
man. I did not expect to get this into philosophy, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
It's really interesting. Maslow was a. I mean, there are other theories, but I think it makes sense because it's so simple.
Mm.
It's so simple. Cool. But let's shift a little bit. Can you tell
Sure.
us a little bit about how does a day in your life look like, and how do you structure your business at the moment so it works? What does it look like?
Sure.
Yeah.
So a usual day, I have a whiteboard over there which has everything that I'm working on and everything that's been booked in.
Mhm.
So I will glance at that every now and again to try and figure out what I'm doing. But usually morning, I have my coffee first thing. Absolutely need that. Step into the studio. I have my
What coffee?
somewhere.
What coffee? How do you make your coffee?
Oh, AeroPress.
AeroPress.
I need it. I best $50 thing you'll ever buy in your whole life is an AeroPress.
How is that this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's halfway between a plunger and a filter coffee.
Yeah.
And I'm not a huge fan of either usually,
Mm-hmm.
but oh man, I'll get you one for Christmas, man. You gotta have. It's so good.
All right, cool.
It's so good. Anyway, so I have my coffee. I have a notepad somewhere, which is like usually always by my side, and I will write out a list in the morning. Usually my tasks will be things like, first thing I'll go through the emails, invoices, the little things, try and stay on top of that. And then I'll just get into a project. So maybe that'll be mixing, maybe that'll be mastering. And I try these days to focus on that task exclusively, instead of juggling a bunch all at once, if that makes sense. So I will spend the whole day getting that mix perfect.
Wow.
And then I'll take breaks throughout the day. I'm a big believer of lots of little breaks, especially when you're mixing or mastering, because those ears, they will get fatigued, and you need that, what's the word? Not contrast, like point of reference, essentially, to stay with it. And that would be usually the day. I'll start around 9:30 with that stuff. I'll start a mix at say 10, and I'll probably finish it at 7 o'clock at night. And then maybe later I'll go do mastering at night or something. Sometimes I'll have people come through and we'll do recording. Not at the moment, with stage 4 lockdown.
Yeah, wait.
It's Corona.
I should actually do this.
I've got mine somewhere as well. But and that's something I feel very fortunate to be mostly mixing, because we are able to continue working, as opposed to recording might be a bit tough right now.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's usually it. It's usually long hours, 6 days. Big believer. I'm not a believer in a 1 day off a week. It's just the way it is at the moment. But yeah.
How so you said that people can book in. How do they do that? Do they call, or how does the booking system work?
So if I'm working with somebody, if it's a usual client that I've been working with for a long time, chances are they'll probably call. Or we have a booking system through the website, so some of them will they know that like the back of their hand. They'll just book it in. That system is linked to our Google Calendars. So there's no way for them to book me when I don't want to work or I can't work. Excuse me. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So either over the phone, I'll do it on the computer, or they'll do it on their own. Yeah.
What made you decide to go that route, to automate it? Is it better to have something automated, or do you prefer when people call and you talk about the project? What do you prefer?
I prefer when they call.
Yeah.
Because I get a more accurate idea of what they're after, and I also get to provide a more accurate idea of what they will be looking for. Because a lot of the time, especially with first timers, they don't exactly know what they're getting themselves into. And I think having that initial conversation, even just to say, hey, it might take a lot more money than you think to get this project done, can be really illuminating for them.
Yes, absolutely.
But it's a 3-minute song. I only need 3 minutes.
I'm mixing real time.
Yeah.
Done. Yeah. I think it's easy sometimes to laugh about it, but fact is most people just simply don't know, right? They don't know what it takes.
Yeah.
I have a lot of long-term clients, and we usually start with songwriting and then producing, and then they say like, just quickly mix it. And then they actually sit into a mixing session and say like, oh my God, I had no idea that we're still sitting here after 3 hours, and like, and it still sounds getting better and better. It's crazy. So I don't think many people understand what mixing is. How would you define mixing music? What does that mean?
Oh, okay. I've been working on this.
Oh, all right. Give me a pitch.
This is my perfect analogy, or my favorite analogy. a new client walks through the door and they say, you know, what is mixing, what is mastering? And I say this. So a songwriter and a producer, they go out in the morning to the fresh food markets and they're finding the best fish. They're finding the best, you know, vegetables, the freshest ones. And the recording engineer is that as well. Their job is to get the best ones possible. And then the producer and songwriters are also the cooks, where they get those fresh ingredients and they sort of cook it together and they design this beautiful recipe. And once they've got all of these ingredients laid out and the recipe laid out, a mix engineer steps in and takes these ingredients, sees what they wanted to go for, reads the recipe and builds it, hopefully, perfectly, and maybe even puts her own little salt and pepper in there, maybe. Just a little bit. And then you have a beautiful dish in a saucepan on the stove. At that point, you could taste it. It might be delicious. But it's not, you wouldn't just serve it on a plate in a saucepan. So a mastering engineer, I think, is the person that comes and they put it into a perfect bowl, they wipe around the edges, they put a garnish on top, they make it look beautiful. The service, you know, that's my analogy anyway.
Interesting. I like that. I do like that a lot. I sometimes use the making a car analogy, you know.
Oh yeah, because you have experience.
I don't know even why, because I'm not actually a car person, but I just think a lot of people know, like, okay, you have a construction line, and then, but I love that. I think that's definitely more accessible to even more people. Can I steal that from you?
Absolutely. I think I probably stole it from somebody else.
There you go.
But the thing I like about that analogy is it also puts in recording engineers and songwriters and producers, because often, especially younger artists or newer artists, don't have a concept of all of the different roles that exist in this field. They probably just think there might be, they usually say, what, a producer, right? Producer makes the song, they mix the song, they master the song.
Yeah. Markets the song as well, makes the video clip.
Yeah.
Right? Public relations, publishes, all of, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, oh man.
But it's a fun one. You know what I like about working in the music industry is also that you always can transition. You can, I've had a beautiful interview a couple of weeks ago with Jack the Bear.
Oh, Tony's great.
Yeah, Tony's amazing, right? And just hearing his journey, and like he specializes in mastering, which is like a super specialized field. I think that's for me, that's the crown jewel as a mixing engineer, right? To say like, okay, I'm that good that people only hire me for making the dish look nice and taste just a little bit more, right?
And you're so important. It's the very last touch before anything, before the person eats the dish, right?
Yeah.
So if they have a beautiful soup and they get a whole potato and drop it in, you know,
it's still a good soup, but yeah.
A lot of power with the last step.
It is. You can definitely put too much salt in it or too little.
Big responsibility.
It is.
But Tony's fantastic.
He's definitely my spirit animal. I don't know. Crazy guy. I just love him.
I love his authenticity. He is and always has been Tony, and he's not going to be anybody else.
Yeah. And he's one of the people who's actually really comfortable with himself.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? I can definitely say for myself that I still, not that I'm searching myself. I think I have a good idea who I am as a person, but there's still a lot of things that I haven't explored, and still a lot of things that I'm unsure about because I'm just stupid in most things, right? Like Tony's okay with being really good at 1-2 things, and he's totally fine with being stupid in all the other things. You know, he's not that he is stupid. Tony.
No.
But he's just really. Himself.
He's done a lot of self-work. I know that, and he's also been on this earth a little bit longer. He's been on his skin, you know, in his skin. And I hope that you and I will be the same. That the more comfortable we are in this skin and on this earth,
Yeah.
hopefully the more comfortable we are with everything, right?
Amen, brother. For sure.
All we can
I'm
hope
not.
for. Never stop working at ourselves. I think that's another big thing.
What
Always
was it?
for.
Who said it? Never stop stopping. What was that?
I
Was
don't
it
know
that
who
movie?
said
I
it.
think it was that movie from. Oh, who's this comedian? Never Stop Stopping. It's a great movie. It's with this Ali G, I
Oh,
think.
I
Yeah, he
don't
made
think
this
I've
movie. You
seen
have
that
to
in
watch it. It's this
such a
movie
long time.
about this boy, and he
Sacha
becomes a
Baron
pop
Cohen,
star.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah. I haven't seen it since it came out
and it's
so many years
just,
ago.
oh my god, and he's just taking the piss out of like pop stars. Never stop. You have to watch it, man. It's a must. It's a
I will dust it off and get back in there. That is a
great movie.
classic.
Great movie.
Oh man.
Um, let's talk a little bit about how we can help making, people who are just finished with school, people who are just maybe finished with uni, to make a little bit of a decision, like should you go pro, should you not, to what could be tips and so on. And I would like to start with maybe a little bit of a provocative question. Uni, yes or no?
The big one. The
The
big
big one.
question.
What's your take on it?
I'm going to be a really annoying answer and say not definitive yes or no. I think it really depends on the person.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, yes was the right choice, because I knew nothing, and it provided me with a lot of the really core, really important foundations, things like how sound works, and how we interpret sound, the really basic things. And then slowly, in fact, I feel like my whole diploma was the basics, not so much the practicality of applying it, but this is how everything worked. And for me, where I was an absolute dummy with that stuff, it was incredible. I can also see the advantages to networking if I was probably 18 and could go to bars and things. But I also think for some, no is the best answer. Somebody who maybe they've been an amateur for audio engineer, mixing or making their own music for many years, and maybe their stuff sounds all right.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't need to know, or maybe they already do know how the Fletcher-Munson curve, or that an EQ creates phase distortion, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And if that's the case, then why spend the huge amount of money and the huge amount of time to potentially go and learn the same stuff again? I think the other thing that everybody wants to talk about is real world experience. And that, at least for my career, is where it started properly. Like the difference of my work from I've been doing uni for a year or two, and the difference of I've been in the field for a year or two, it's like astronomically different, and more positive. Like I learned so much in the field, and the biggest thing that you learn is people. It's not really, it has all that much to do with the perfect mic choice. It's more about, oh, I said the wrong thing by mistake, and that person now can't perform for the rest of the day.
Yeah, right. That's very interesting.
Or the biggest one, and
yeah.
this is what was great to learn under somebody, how do you talk about money with an artist? Like, man, have you ever, I'm sure you have, seen a new person just fresh into the field try to have the money conversation with an artist?
It's devastating, man. It's
so I guess if you want to pay, like, what do you think's fair? What should I?
Yeah, or just not talking about it at all, right?
Yeah,
just
right. So
maybe the client brings it up themselves, like I don't want to make them uncomfortable.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
It's a big one. It's a big one.
I've seen that happen. I've had interns over the years, and sometimes they have their friends come through and they're working with them, and I usually get like a text that's kind of like a help rescue help me. And they always seem so, I guess, baffled or confused when I walk and I go, right, so that's this much, cash card. And they're like, oh, you can just say that? I'm like, yes, it's a business.
Yeah.
Why do you think we are so careful with this in creative fields?
I think two reasons. First of all, I think that we believe by adding money to the occasion, we create a non-creative atmosphere,
Mm,
and we're fearing that our person we work with we're just exploiting them. I think
right.
that's one, because we want to be in this creative buddy zone, and then bringing money in the game. Usually, thanks to our prior experience with money, it's always a little bit of tension, right? Most of us didn't grow up with abundance of money, so it's not natural. We're not being taught how to talk about money, how to make money, save money, and so on. So it is a new field for most people to actually talk
Yeah.
about. And I mean, how many people in your surrounding do you know that you can openly talk about money? Especially in Australia, I find it's definitely a kind of like a taboo, unless you like really good friends. But even then,
Yeah.
um, so I think it's kind of like, this kind of, it adds a certain level of insecurity, personal insecurity. And I think the second reason is also determining self-worth, right?
Yeah.
Because you literally have to state how much you're worth. If you're inherently not knowing, especially as a young person, how do you know what you're worth? Compared to whom? Compared to what? Right? If you're
Yeah.
not used to that, if you don't have a ballpark, and stating like, hey, this is my service, this is my livelihood, and I'm worth that much, and I'm okay with being worth that amount of money, it plays a huge role, of
Yeah.
self-worth. If you never learned that, really.
I think also creatives usually undervalue themselves, almost every single time.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, if it's a visual artist or a poet or a musician, producer, same thing. They
yeah,
always put in 100 hours of effort and they say, oh, I don't know, give me $50.
yeah. I think that's probably another reason, Curtis. It's the idea of selling out by charging,
uh,
right? Because as a creative
maybe.
person, we do it because we love it. Now, when we
Yeah.
charge for it, suddenly it becomes a job, something, it's a transaction, it's something rational, it's something, the big guys are doing, and I don't want to be in the aristocratic, top shelf. I'm not a manager. I'm not, I don't talk about money. I express myself. Now, when you suddenly say, I need to talk about money because it's my livelihood, see, now we fear what people could say to us. Oh, it's a sellout, or it's overpriced, or who do you think you are, right? But again, I think it really comes down to self-worth.
Yeah, you're probably absolutely correct. I think that's a really good point. But I even now I've been doing this for 11 years now and 5 full-time years.
Yeah.
I still find it difficult, even though I have completely set rates. I still find it difficult to charge projects that were really fun. It's
Mm.
just a mental psychology thing. Even though it's taken up my time and I still have to pay my bills,
Yeah.
as something about it, you don't feel comfortable charging for something you enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, that there are two ways that you can do that. You can either just get it out of the way in the beginning and just make really clear, look, this is weird, but we want to talk, let's talk about money just once, then we put it aside, and then that's it. And then I want to make music, right? But
Yeah.
of course, I know that you want to honor what I work, and I want to be the best that I can do. So I don't want to stress about money. So here's how it's going to work. How does that sound? I think if you put that in the front and everyone knows kind of the level of expectations, I think that helps. And I think what you do well, what you just said, is like in the end also just stating, well, that's what it is,
Yeah.
right? But I think, I think that comes really, it's just something asocial. I think that's something that we associate with something being asocial, like not being friends anymore, because now it's a customer relationship, not a friend to friend, right? Like,
Oh man,
right,
that's
5 minutes
such a
we just
great.
bawled our eyeballs out, and we just talked about the depths of our souls, and how to amplify that through sounds. And now, like, okay, it's $10 or it's $1,000, it feels a bit it feels a bit off, right?
Yeah,
um
yeah.
yeah.
It's that's a good point too that I would love to talk to you about is managing friendships and work relationships, this field that we work in is one of the very few fields where that gets blurred constantly. Either it's a person that is a client at first and becomes a friend, or a friend at first that becomes a client. There is that element where you would hang out with them outside of what you do. And I don't know about you, but I have always found managing that line very difficult.
Yeah, interesting. I think, how do I do that? I think, to be honest, most of the artists I work with are my friends. I would consider them a friend. And a friend for me, my definition, can I call them at 3 a.m. if I need something? like not ice cream, not ice cream, right? But like, okay, well,
why not?
But that for me is a description, a definition of what a friend is. And I would say I would feel very comfortable with most of my clients to call them a friend, because I invite them to parties and so on. And for me, really, there is no delineation, because what I see, like, we're all people. Like, and the question that I ask myself, if I acquire their services and what they're good at, you know, if my friend that recorded here with me and they pay me, and he is an accountant, I would pay them rent handsomely as well, because I value them as a person and I know what they're worth, and they know what I'm worth, and they know what that money is for, right? So I think for me, it helps stop delineating between clients and friends and saying, like, all of the people I work with, if it's privately or professionally, are people that I only want to work with if I want to invite them to my son's birthday party.
I like that.
Right? And if not, then I probably won't be the best person to work with, because I probably would just think about the money, or would, resist really giving it my all and being open and honest with them. So for me, I don't want to work with people that are not my friends, or that I couldn't see potentially being friends or family.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And I think I'm beginning to see the same thing. Only recent times I've started to stop working with certain people to make more time for those people that you just sort of talked about.
But look, that being said, this is a luxury, right, that we're having, that we have that many clients that we can say, like, to be honest, I don't want to continue working with this client because it's just not worth my time, or it never makes me feel good. The outcome is not the best. I don't feel, it's worth my while or my energy. We just don't gel. And that's okay too. But that takes years, right? We know that. It takes years to be that. I think the first 3 to 5 years, you have to eat shit. You will work with clients that you don't like, period. You will work on projects that you absolutely hate. And you will repair more than you actually have to mix, right? Because...
Yes.
Right?
I still do that now.
Yeah.
I still do that now.
And that's okay. But I only want to do that now when they're friends, and when I say, like, I love this person so much that I want to repair the shit out of it, so that when they go home with that they say, like, fuck, I'm worth something,
Oh man, how many times have I opened up a project and be like, get everything lined up now. All right, let's hear this. Okay, gonna bust out RX on this one.
Yeah, I mean,
well, like, right? Immediately you open up Melodyne, you're like, okay.
Yes, yeah, and that's okay. But I only want to do that with people that I love, to be honest.
Totally get it.
Right?
Totally get it. Yeah.
Otherwise, we don't do our best. I don't think that we're soulless, service providers only, But that's just my stupid take on it.
No, I love it.
Before we close off for today, and I know we definitely have to do that again, because we have so much to talk about, but just in order to honor your time and also our audience's time, I want to finish with some quick fire questions. Yeah, maybe.
Oh, I love this.
Good. So just maybe 1 or 2 sentences per question. First one, most importantly, do you make your bed in the morning?
No, because my partner always sleeps longer than I get up earlier.
Lucky.
So okay.
But if not, would you do it?
No.
No judgment. And there's no winning or losing, right? Okay. What are the 3 things that you use in your job on a daily basis?
3 things. My notebook, my notepad. I couldn't live without my notepad. Okay, here's one. Do you know the app Music Math?
No, I don't know that one. Music Math. Let me write
You
that
have
down.
to have $17. You will not regret it.
Music Math.
It's a little calculator, music calculator. It does everything from telling you the pitch of certain notes, when you can even change the concert A, the middle A to get the new frequencies.
Yeah.
It also does all of your delay timings as well. So if you put in the BPM, it'll give you the divisions. That I use that every day.
Yeah.
One more. Oh, my other set. I don't think you can see it.
Yeah.
Oh,
What does that do for the people who don't know what it is?
it's a fancy volume controller. But we use it to switch between different sets of speakers, different input sources. So maybe like a phone reference or an iTunes reference, and then the Pro Tools session. Constantly using it, hands always on it, turning it down, swimming to mono, check things in mono. Couldn't live without it.
Yeah. What would you tell a young person coming into your studio and saying, hey, I want to be a professional mixing engineer one day? What would you tell them to do?
I ask the question again to them. Are you sure? What would I tell them?
What would you tell them?
It's not all music. I thought it would be going into it. It is not. There's a lot of, you still have to email, you still have to write invoices, you have to organize your calendar.
Yeah, interesting. I think that's a good lead into my next question. How, like, if you divide your week, how much percentage do you think you work creatively, like on projects in your sessions and with clients, versus how much business administration and so on? What do you think is the percentage?
It's usually about an hour a day.
Hour a day.
Yeah. So I guess maybe like 7%, 8%.
Okay. Oh, that's pretty good. That's a good ratio.
Now it is. It used to be much worse.
Yeah.
That's part of why I automate everything.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. My very last question for you, Curtis, is, and I usually end with that question. Let's say you have your last day on Earth one day, and but unfortunately, all the memories of your past successes have been erased. There's no recollection of all the Grammy records that you've done. There's no recollection of your past work that you've done, but you still have the experience that you have in your mind. And before you nibble off into whatever you think comes next, after your life, you have one post-it note, and you can share your wisdom to the world just on that post-it note. What would you put on that?
Oh, in regards to mixing and stuff?
No, in regards to life, in regards to what is your highest wisdom that you would like to share, or what is something that you would like to present to the next generation of humankind?
Oh, look, there's no way for this to not sound cliche.
That's good.
That's good. But you really need to love yourself. You really need to learn to accept and love whoever you are, good and bad. Work on the bad parts, embrace the good parts, but you need to love yourself.
Oh, thank you, Curtis. That was a beautiful intro for the endless conversations that we will continue to have. Thanks for being part of the records, and thanks for inspiring young artists to follow your footsteps and be inspiring for young artists and people who want to enter the music industry. Thanks for taking your time today.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute privilege.
Thank you.